Hey everybody, I'm Francesca Maxime. This is Wise Girl. It is September 14th in the evening here in Brooklyn. And I just got off a volunteer call from my reunion from college, and it's kind of fun to see who's going to all pitch in and get together and donate some time to put together our event coming up in May, I guess it is, of next year. And I wanted to talk about that kind of generosity. People can give and receive generosity in a variety of ways. Some of it's financial, some of it is time, some of it is with acts of affection, some of it might be compliments in a way that you could say something nice about someone, and a variety of different ways to be generous. And if one sort of orients their heart toward being in a place where they're more willing to give, then of course that often attracts other people wanting to also share with the person who is giving. So it becomes sort of this mutual exchange that comes along the way. One of the things I've noticed, though, with a lot of folks who are people who do tend to give often is that they often have a hard time receiving. And I wanted to flip the script a little bit on generosity and talk for a moment about the fact that one of the ways that we can actually be generous and allow, if you will, the wheel of generosity to spin is to receive generosity from others. So, for example, if someone says to you, "You look really nice today," and you say to them, "Oh, well, I just bought this dress at, Goodwill or something," or, whatever it might be. Or if somebody says to you, "I really liked the way that you handled yourself in that meeting," and you sort of poo-poo it and say, "Yeah, well, I don't know how that came out of my mouth, but it worked," or something along those lines, you're kind of, in some ways, not really allowing the full experience of what the other person is trying to share with you, which is they're seeing the light that they see in you, the light that you bring, but you're kind of cutting it off. You're kind of saying, "No, I'm not going to allow this to happen." It's sort of a dam instead of letting the water, the river water flow. And there really isn't a need for that, and yet it happens a lot. And so the question is why? We don't need to judge ourselves about the fact that we might notice that this happens, but the real question is to just sort of ask ourselves why it happens. And I think that kind of investigation can be useful because for a lot of people, receiving opens up a certain kind of a vulnerability because it might remind you of what you didn't get when you really did need it, and so therefore you kind of trained yourself to not need it anymore. So for example, if you were a kid that went to your recitals and tried to sing or dance or act in a way that was great for your 4th grade play or your 6th grade play or however the scenario might be, and you didn't get what you needed from that scenario from your caregivers, might it have been compliments, might it have been, a big to-do, might it have been that your parents showed up or your caregivers even showed up, maybe they didn't come. And if you took that on as somehow believing, for example, that you weren't good enough, maybe, or God forbid that you were even a bad person, or maybe that you weren't worth their time, or maybe that, there was something wrong with you or with your performance, and that's somehow the reason why in your head that as a child we tend to interpret these things often with much more gravity than they need. We misconstrue what's actually going on. We kind of tend to then have a certain position that helps us survive that situation, particularly if it's a situation that's repeated, time after time, or it manifests more than once in our life. And we sort of take this position where we're sort of saying, "Listen, I don't need this anymore. I'm not going to want it anymore, and I'm going to refuse it because it's safer than putting myself in that vulnerable space where I feel as though I wanted something and needed something back in the day, and I didn't get it." So let's just take that in for a second, right? That we can kind of like pay a little attention to that part of ourselves that says, I really wanted something, and it was okay to want it, and I didn't get it. And my heart, that child part of me, frankly, that inner child part of me, it's still kind of bruised about that. And the way that I've been able to survive that is by being this tough exoskeleton of doing and of performing in life and of being generous to others or for other causes. But I don't let it in. I have sort of a, the membrane doesn't go both ways. It's only semi-permeable, right? It just stops on one side. So looking at the roots of what that is and recognizing that we're vulnerable in that arena, how do we start to shift? Because what are we kind of missing out on? How does it create a more myopic view and beget perhaps fewer people giving you the care and the sustenance that you need and that you want, when in fact you still deserve it as an adult? And when people try to do it today, you kind of push it away because it's sort of what you're used to. One way might be to just simply take a breath and promise to yourself that the next time somebody says or does something that is complimentary and generous to you, that is kind and, wants to be generous of time or money or spirit or and a gift or whatever that you would normally refuse, just try to see if you can pause and take maybe 2 or 3 breaths, allowing your nervous system to settle and your sort of receptivity open up a little bit. And then ask yourself maybe, what would it mean for that person to be able to actually be able to execute in a satisfying way, meaning that it's received, that which I'm offering? What would it mean to that person? If I were that person and I was giving something away and someone refused my gift, how would that feel? So what does it mean to that person if I'm not choosing to allow them to be generous to me, that I don't want to receive their gift? And then maybe take another moment and instead of staying in that space that says no, or it sort of blurts out an excuse, or even if you do, you can always walk it back in this situation, right? This isn't a life or death situation, although it may feel that way in the moment because we're talking about our deep child parts, right? You may want to sit there and say, you know what? I'd love that. Or simply, thank you. Or how thoughtful. Maybe think of some of the things people have said to you when you have given a gift or done something for someone, and the things that have resonated with you that really kind of made you feel good inside when you were able, because someone allowed you to give to them when they needed it or wanted it, or even frivolously when it wasn't really so needed, but it was just sort of a thoughtful, extra nice thing to do, adding a little beauty to the world, adding a little happiness to the world. Maybe think of some of the things that people have said to you that have made you feel good and say that back to the person that normally you might refuse. And then see if you can't receive that gift with your adult body. And then imagine a gift that your child part might have needed and receive that gift from not just the adult, meaning you can kind of like mask it, right? Like instead of getting, for example, the chocolate cake that somebody just might have given you now, they might have given you the red fire truck that, you didn't get when you were in 2nd grade that you really wanted. So you can play with your mind, because the mind is actually plastic, your brain is, and you can replace it with something that really was something that you wanted. And not get too caught up or get too stressed out about, the particulars or whatever. But see if you can't match it and marry it and say, this is just like me receiving that thing that I wanted. This is sort of my present day version of getting something that, somebody who cared about me and somebody who thought about me wanted to share with me. And I'm going to take it in. I'm going to allow this to happen now. And we can titrate. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. We can, try it with little things like compliments, and then we can move on to other things like, people wanting to do favors for you, like, hey, I'll help you move. And as opposed to breaking your back, trying to move the couch on your own, you actually let the other person come over and help you move it, that kind of thing. You can move into those other things without, again, feeling like you owe them anything. Because at the root of all of this is that you are enough. That there isn't really another thing you have to do to pay them back. You're not going to owe somebody something just because they did something nice for you and you allowed it to happen. And you're not automatically going to be seen as some weakling who can't be independent or, doesn't know how to take care of themselves, because we know you know how to do that. But this is taking care of the part of you that still wants a little bit of attention, that maybe you've been a little bit afraid, which is perfectly fine and natural, to give. Because you survived the past, you did a great job at that, and now we want to go from that surviving to thriving. And so the thriving part is about allowing the generosity of others to also be a part of your experience. And to see where those opportunities are every day. You may just notice them at first, where you're sort of noticing, oh, whoa, I didn't let that person hold the door open for me. Or when that person, wanted to, buy me lunch, I refused, when we're in the cafeteria line. Let them buy you lunch if they offer. What is it, $10? It's not going to kill them, probably, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be offering it. And not feel as though you owe anyone anything, that you are enough, and that it is a gift to the other person to allow them to be able to give to you in much the same way that you have been able to do and give for others. So, just a thought. Maybe try it out. Let me know how it goes. I'm Francesca Maxime. This is Wise Girl, and I will see you soon. Take it easy.